to me. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for quieting down. Welcome everyone to the Lincolnville Selectmen's meeting. It is October 12th, and before we get going, Kern, would you read the quote of the evening?
I'd be glad to. Sports do not build character, they reveal it. Haywood Brown.
Thank you very much, and at this point I would like to open the podium for any non-agenda items. Seeing nobody rushing up to the podium, let's move along to the administrator's report.
Oh boy. First thing is absentee ballots are available now. If anybody wants or needs one, you can request one online through the town's website. You can call, you can come in and vote in person, or come in and request it and take it with you. You cannot send us an email, just so you know. Those will be available through the Thursday prior to November 2nd, and then you can obtain one still after that by filling out a special circumstance application. The well has been drilled at Crockett's, hasn't been connected to anything, but it's a big hole in the ground. The Inland Harbor Master, I think the board ought to take some time to sit down with him and go over his status, and if that's all right, I'm probably trying to line it up maybe for 5:30 for your next meeting. I don't think it'll take too long, but that works.
Sound good to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And the other is, I just want to reconfirm, the town of Camden has changed their format for the dam meeting that was supposed to be, or will be, on Thursday. Mm-hmm. They've gone from in the French conference room, they're now going to have a set up out in the Harbor Park, where they'll have different, apparently, tables set up for people to gain knowledge from the watershed study, which seemed a little, is going to go from 1 to 3, seemed a little bit different than what we had initially anticipated, sitting down talking about policy regarding the east and the west dams. And just want to know what your thoughts are, if you still want to go, so that I can issue an agenda, should that be, because we did have a quorum of selectmen that would be there. I don't, I'm concerned that it may not be exactly conducive to having a good conversation about operating dams, that you could even have a chance to introduce yourself necessarily to the selectmen there, and vice versa, but
Yeah, I mean, I would ask the select board members to consider whether they want to attend, not because I don't think it would be interesting as an event, but I certainly, the format is so off base from two sets of policymakers getting together and discussing policy and the financial implications of those policies, rather than a sort of meet and greet science fair feeling kind of thing. I mean, that the intent that I think it's wonderful that they've invited us to the event, but I do not see it as a constructive forum in which to discuss real policy between policymakers.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed, because I thought we were pretty straightforward with our request, and it's been, kicked down the road a few times, and I don't think there would be any advantage for us to meet with them in a public forum, so to speak. It's gracious of them to invite us to it, but it's a public event. And I just don't see how we could effectively get anything done. So I'm going to, plus it's middle of the day, and to be real honest with you, I'm a working stiff, so I can't get out at 1 o'clock.
All right.
Yeah, no, I've seen what it's going to become, and matter of fact, I was just reading an article about it in today's Village Soup. I think, yeah, it's not appropriate for what we need to talk about. So I'm happy to pass on it.
I'll be attending. Clearly, the format is not what we had originally intended. I think this event is not just for us at this point. It's for the greater public, for more than just Camden and Lincolnville. But I think there's still value in us attending. You know, it won't be that sit-down conversation. Hopefully we'll have that again, have that in the future. But I still think there's value, and I'll certainly report back what I learned.
Sure.
That'd be great.
I'm also planning to attend. I'm a working stiff, but I've got some flex, so I had that time set out, and it's definitely not a one-on-one, you know, board to board, but there's gonna be a lot of opportunity to ask some important questions and get some information. For me, that's important, just because I wanna learn, and, so, yeah, I will be heading to it so that I can expand my horizons a little bit.
So to the point of our original request to, the town of Camden, does it make sense to reiterate our request and our desire to sit down and actually have a conversation regarding how we're going to co-manage these pieces of infrastructure?
Yeah.
Well, I think so, yeah.
Given the expectation is that, you know, they sent us invoices,
Sure.
but we have no say. So, everyone okay with asking our town administrator to
Sure.
send another piece of communication?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thanks for bringing that up, David.
Yep, so just for my knowledge, are you going to attend?
No, I
Okay.
am not.
So I'm not going, because there won't be a quorum of select board members, I will not be issuing an agenda, just so everybody knows.
Okay.
And if one of the three of you in the middle change your mind, let me know so I can, so that we can cover the public notice part of that, please.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. That's all I have to report, with the one exception. So it's always one exception that I think of. We did a little project with some roadside brush on Youngtown Road. If you come in from the Beach Road end, once you get up to the top of the hill on the left-hand side, rather than having manpower do manual cutting, we employed a piece of equipment that's got some fancy choppers that you don't want to fall down in front of. Much more efficient in terms of production and probably cost. And we did that kind of on an experimental basis to see how that transpired. And Bernard was going to have them do a little bit on Slab City Road as well, on the 52 end. So if you get a chance, take a look at that so that we can get some feedback, because finding people to do labor is challenging.
So is that the clearing that went from the road down to the utility poles, in essence? Because I was on Youngtown yesterday.
Yep.
You know, coming up by the Youngtown Inn, it was on the right side, but it looked
Yeah,
very,
if you can
very clean.
Yeah, if you can envision it, we do roadside mowing
Yeah.
annually, and the cutter bar is 6 or 8 feet long. So usually the first 6 or 8 feet off the pavement are, you know, the grass is cut down
Yeah.
once a year. And then what happens is, oftentimes vegetation starts to grow in the ditch, and then the ditch becomes full of alders and whatnot, which inhibits the flow and sometimes directs water to where we don't want it, like onto the road, or it dams up and washes out driveways and that type of stuff. So in the past, we've done truly manual labor with cutters, cutting that stuff out or digging it out. And so we're trying something a little different just to see how it works, what people think of it, and how we're satisfied with it when it's done. But so far, seems pretty good.
Great.
That's it, unless you have something on.
We do have a question from the audience.
For someone that doesn't know the Crockett well,
Do you want to come? Yeah.
can I just have a
Yeah, sure, sure.
clarification?
Yeah.
Well, two things, I guess. I saw Slab City did it. I thought it looked great. I had no idea what was going on, but I thought it looked awesome. Can I have some clarification on the Crockett well that's done and not going to anywhere, and what that means?
It's not connected as yet.
To where?
To the Crockett home.
Okay.
We had a salt water or a salt contaminated well at Crockett's,
Okay.
and we're replacing it.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for David under the administrator's report? Alrighty, moving along to upcoming meetings and announcements.
All meetings are here at the town office unless announced otherwise. The first meeting isn't a meeting because we won't have a quorum, but it was at the Board of Selectmen. We're going to attend the McGonagall Dam Committee meeting in Camden Town Office, which got moved to Harbor Park, and now we don't have a quorum. Broadband Committee is scheduled to meet Thursday, October 14th, 5 p.m. Board of Selectmen are scheduled to meet Monday, October 18th, 6 p.m. And Board of Selectmen, our regular scheduled meeting is Monday, November 25th at 6 p.m. On the 18th, we are doing what? Somebody remind me.
Looking at the PFD.
Oh, yes, thank you. The Public Facilities Director applications that are due Thursday for anybody out there that wishes to apply.
Okay. Are there any upcoming community events anyone wishes to share? Seeing none, let's move along to the meeting minutes from the 27th of September.
I move the board approve the September 27th, 2021 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I just have one correction.
Yep.
On line 164, unless I'm reading it wrong. One second. It says here, it's not to pay for the whole build out. It is to pay for a study. If we don't feel that is an appropriate way to spend the money, I think it should be if we feel that is an appropriate way to spend money, then we have a special town meeting and say to the public that we think this is worthwhile.
So the word
Yeah.
don't comes out.
So just strike the word don't.
Yep.
Yeah. And that was it.
Care to amend?
I would amend my motion.
And do we have a second to
So would
that?
I, yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And I might ask the board if they would indulge in switching 6 and 7 so that we could have the broadband update conversation first prior to appointments?
Sure.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a bunch of information contained here. There is the request from Jordan in your email and some supporting information. There's also a couple of grant application drafts in here. And I'm just curious, there's some things that are contained within these drafts, and indeed the drafts themselves, that beg some procedural questions and policy questions. And I guess I just want to say that it is clear the enthusiasm and the passion that is behind this conversation. However, we have policy and procedure that has been long-standing that we are bound to, and as such, I am curious, one, how we came to have these drafts in front of us, if they were completed prior to the reinstitution of the broadband committee, but we actually don't have any members yet because we haven't appointed them. And then there are individuals in these draft grant applications that are either not yet appointed or are no longer wishing to be on the committee, so won't be on the committee going forward. And then I guess this would be a question perhaps for David, is what are the implications for there being the assertion of the broadband committee asserting in a grant application that they maintain an active Facebook page for the Lincolnville Broadband Committee and have a shared town Google document?
the implications behind that.
Sorry, can you ask that again?
Can you be more specific?
On page 3 of the Island Institute draft grant application, under how has the community been engaged, what is the community support for the project, last sentence, we maintain an active Facebook page for the Lincolnville Broadband Committee and have a shared town Google document.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, we don't have an active Facebook page for Lincolnville Broadband Committee. We, town has a social media policy adopted quite a while ago, where we were having some challenges with social media, and the board at the time decided that in order to not to have everybody just go out and start a town social media page and ask that everything be requested at the board level. We don't, and internally, we don't use shared town Google documents. Not to say we couldn't, but we haven't. But did that answer your?
Sure, yeah, so I guess I was a little surprised to see this, and so I'd ask our former committee members those on the board involved in the conversation to expand on that.
So it sounds like you have two very specific questions pertaining to the Google document and the Facebook page thing, and I would say that probably the best way to get an answer is maybe have somebody who was part of drafting that. I don't know if there's anyone in the audience that would like to come up and answer those questions, because, or Mike.
Yeah, I can't answer those questions simply because I passed off the grant applications to Stephen right here, and because I think there were 3 days left, but I knew that I wouldn't be on the committee,
Mm-hmm.
and so I don't know.
Sure. So I guess before we open it beyond the board, I guess the board needs to have a conversation about how this work is being done on our behalf. And the fact that the documents, there's been a lot of work happening, which is great, but it's a complete surprise. We talked about applying for grants, but there seems to be a lot of presumption, and I think we definitely need to clarify the question about the Facebook page and the Google document. So,
Well, if it's inaccurate, it seems like it's pretty simple to strike that sentence.
sure. Sure.
But is there an active Facebook page and a shared town Google document?
In the last committee, we never used a Facebook page, social media thing.
Okay.
My guess is a shared town Google document is reference to the survey that came out of version .1, which is a
Mhm.
Google document, editable by people who are invited, right? Yeah, or invited to edit.
Mhm.
And there's also, and we used Google Documents for the draft of the RFP. It's not, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's anything else.
Well, can we put you in the hot seat, Stephen, and ask you some questions if you'll come to the podium? Do you have insight to offer us in that statement?
Well, I wrote it,
Okay,
so I have some insight.
good to know.
The grant application for the Island Institute is left over from the second broadband committee.
Uh-huh.
We had told the board that we were going to apply, and then were encouraged to apply.
Sure.
And in fact, have been asked repeatedly if we have any applications. So since there was some time urgency there, and since it was in the period between the second and what may be the third, if you decide to appoint people to it, I mean, you've agreed to the charge for the third, but you haven't populated it yet.
Correct.
So the Island Institute grant can be applied by a community organization. It does not require a town. And since we had been talking about the grant application, and since they were almost out of money, in fact, they may actually be out of money, and we'd had Kendra Jo Grindle from the Island Institute at the Broadband Committee 2.0. We hadn't completed the application, so I completed it and sent it in.
So this is not a draft, this has been sent in.
This has been sent in.
On whose behalf?
The Broadband Committee.
That's a town organization.
Right. Not on behalf of the town, on behalf, I mean, the money would come to the town, but the money can only be dispersed to the town, but anybody can apply for it.
But it's not a correct document.
It's not a what?
A correct document. It contains
Well,
inherent.
and I apologize, and if the fact that we don't have an active Facebook group makes it incorrect, and therefore we should withdraw our application for money which has already been allocated to other towns in Maine, we can do that.
Is there a Facebook page? Is there a Lincolnville Broadband?
Well,
Committee
the Facebook page, there's the Lincolnville Town News that we have continued to post on. For instance, I've posted several times about seeking people to join the committee.
Uh-huh.
On the Lincolnville Community News page, I think it's called, where people put lost cats and stuff like that. So that's what we were referring to there. The shared Google Doc is a shared Google Doc, which, as Mike said, we have used repeatedly for things like pulling together the draft of the RFP, pulling together the draft of the charge for each subsequent committee. So we have had a shared Google Doc that has been used by the Broadband Committee.
Uh-huh.
But those two things, strictly speaking, you're right, there is not a community Facebook broadband page. And if you think that should invalidate our application for grant funding for $5,000 from the Island Institute, we can withdraw that.
Well,
Because we haven't been awarded it yet.
there are serious implications for saying that there is a Lincolnville Broadband Committee Facebook page.
What are those?
You're speaking purely from your own personal opinion as one
I'm speaking.
select board member. You can't speak for us all, lady.
I'm speaking for the.
I know, but
social,
I'm just saying, I would like
for
for you to clarify
for
when you
the
make these
social-
statements, let me finish speaking, please, that these are your personal opinions and that you are not speaking on behalf of the town or the board. You do this quite often. I would like you to make that delineation because there's a big difference. You are making this is your personal opinion, correct?
I am speaking with reference to the adopted social media policy.
But this is your opinion, right?
It's not an opinion, we have a social media policy, and I'm trying to establish whether this was a misrepresentation or if there is a Facebook page
Yeah.
for the broadband.
But that is
committee.
solely because you are trying to figure out for yourself. I'm not referencing the policy, I'm referencing where your line of questioning is coming from. And I don't want it to be assumed that you're speaking for an entire group. You have reservations and questions that you're trying to find out information from, correct?
Because we as a board need to have a conversation.
That's different. You're kind of deflecting. So you're asking a question for your own personal clarification. You're not asking for the whole board, correct?
I'm asking on behalf of the policy that we as a board have adopted
In relation to the policies for your own information.
regarding an official document
Yeah,
that's gone out
that's fine. There's still a
on our
difference. though.
behalf.
A lot of times these questioning go on and it's with the presumption that you're speaking for us all, and I would like there to be a separation between that. Does that make sense?
Can Stephen answer my question?
I, as an
Or-
elected select board member, asked you a question. Please don't deflect to the person who's talking. I want it to be clear when we're each individually talking about, on our own volition, about our own curiosities, not that you're speaking for the whole board at once, because that's not the role of the chair.
Well, that's a ridiculous supposition, and I am not doing that.
Well, I also don't
simply-
appreciate you categorizing what I'm saying as ridiculous. It's not polite, it's not respectful, and I've never done that for you. So please don't paint what I'm saying in a negative light or insulting. I find it to be insulting that you would call what I just said ridiculous.
I think you're distracting from the conversation at hand, and I am happy to hand it over to anyone else on the board to ask any questions. I was in a conversation with Stephen, which you interrupted, which is disrespectful and rude. and I feel that Stephen can answer the question.
You're right. It is, I was not aware of the town's social media policy, for which I apologize. I did refer to the news of the Facebook, of the broadband stuff on the Lincolnville town page, inappropriately calling it the Broadband Committee Facebook page. It's the town's all news of any kind lost cat page, on which I also put a plea for my fellow citizens. If you're interested in this, please come and join us. It is a mistake. It should not have been there. I hope it doesn't negate the overall application for grant funding, because I would hate to pull our application before we get an answer, which we will get within a week, because it was only a 2-week window, which is why, and I apologize for submitting it, but we talked about it so much, and then I saw the window closing, and I was trying to get us into the competition before all the money was given away. And so I submitted it. We can always decline the grant.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else on the board have questions for Stephen?
Not a question.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Yeah, Josh?
So I was under the impression at the end of our last meeting that we actually wanted action done on this grant. That we have been talking about, I mean, gosh, we were talking about the Island Institute grant in Broadband Committee 1.0, which is last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so from our conversation as a board, my impression was let's submit for this thing as soon as possible. And I was on the emails chain as well as a number of other people that Stephen circulated asking for comments on the grant application and trying to make it as strong as possible. And Stephen took the initiative to do this, and I'm really grateful, because it wouldn't have happened without that. And time is of the essence for all of this stuff, and we're, you know, as we've talked about before, we're really late to the game with this. So, I mean, I'm glad it was submitted, because that window is closing, and I understand process and procedure, but personally, I was under the impression we were happy for this to be, you know, sent out. And the other one hasn't been. That has to be submitted by a town, and so hopefully we can talk about this draft for Connect Maine, you know, soon, tonight, and then go from there.
Okay. Thoughts?
I got something to say. Do you want to say something? I'm deferring to you.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, well, beauty and age and all that stuff. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. No, I'm fine with this going out. I totally understand where you're coming from. Well, I don't know if I totally understand it, but I partially understand it enough to know that you're coming from the right place. But I'm happy that you've done it. Good for you. Best interest of the town. You're doing it. Fine. Not doing it to represent the town. I don't have a problem with it. Whether or not anything that you have put in here jeopardizes or advances the cause, you know, the chances of getting the $5,000, I have no idea. But glad that you put some stuff in there. Great.
Mike?
Yeah.
I don't think, no, I'm sorry, I just said Mike, I didn't say Mike.
I'm sorry.
Although I will if you want me to. How we get to the end result, more often than not, is extremely important, sometimes more important than what the end result is gonna be. To honor and follow policy and procedure is what we're here to do. It isn't my place to say we shouldn't have sent it, because we needed to, I understand that, but doing it the right way is what I'm here to see follow through. think the questions were out of line. I think we were trying to get to get an answer. I for one, picked the phone up and had a conversation about, do we have a Facebook page? Do we have a Google Documents? Because that's a red flag to me, especially for select individuals leading a town. It's a concern. That's all I have to say about that. But I think going forward, we need to make sure that our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed before things like this happen. That's all I got.
Yeah, I, just to finish my thought, thank you, Stephen, for taking the time to explain the backstory of this, and absolutely, I think we were all on the same page, like, let's get these grant applications going. And I am going to lean on my position that I hold for absolutely every conversation that we have sitting in this room as a board, is that passion, enthusiasm, momentum are all great, but as Kern so aptly put, how you get there matters, and ensuring that everyone is on the same page, that documents that are going out representing the town or town committees are done so by committee, and email chains and that kind of thing do not a committee meeting make. And if we can get this grant, I hope we can get this grant. It would be a wonderful thing for us to get this grant, so I am not in any way, shape, or form implying that we should retract it, but mistakes, large mistakes were made. And I would like to see us be more thoughtful, more process, more procedure oriented going forward. And as I've said before, I want us to get this right, and I don't want the haste to unintentionally turn the course down the road. And that is why we have things that have been adopted by our voters, things that have been adopted by the board, that we are obligated to when it comes to executing town work, and by default, committees are beholden to that as well. So that's all that, why I needed the clarification. And Jordan, I apologize, I'm gonna turn it over to you because this is your agenda item, and so I wanna hand it over to you. But I felt that the board needed to have that clarification of the backstory in order to move forward well.
And I agree 100% with both of your questions. I just felt it was being framed in a much different way than just simply asking, can I have clarification on what you meant by the Facebook page as well as the Google document? There was and I won't rehash it, but it was not framed in that manner, and I just wanted it to be more neutral. So,
Well, as such, you requested this agenda item, and so the floor is yours.
thank you. So I just wanted to bring two things really to the public's attention. One is the emergency broadband benefit, which is for low-income households that are struggling with bills. This is something that the federal government has set up, and I think it could really benefit any families or households that are having trouble with bills right now. They can apply to this and actually receive not a rebate, but they will receive help in paying for their internet bill. So I just thought that that was something that was important to bring to the town, because I know there are a lot of people right now who are having financial difficulties, and if you can save $50 a month on internet, I think that that would be a fantastic thing to do. The other thing I just wanted to bring up, and this is not something that's been acted upon yet by the FCC, but there was an executive order that came out in July that addressed competition in the American economy, and this does affect some people in Lincolnville, or really anyone who has contracts with any provider of telecommunications. There was a recommendation to the FCC that they try and enforce and put into practice an elimination of early contractual penalty, which can oftentimes been, $200 or more. So those were just two informational things that I wanted to kind of just bring to the table, not necessarily take action on, but just I thought were pertinent pieces of information that could help some of the people in town. So that's.
I think that's great information. The consumer doesn't necessarily always see stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it is their responsibility, to do stuff like that. I know, a lot of people are just trying to survive, and it's tough to even search, seek, and devour that type of information, but it certainly doesn't help to bring that to the table for the consumer to hear it, so that they know that this stuff is available for them. I don't, and obviously I didn't take it this way, but we're getting the information out there, but it's the consumer's responsibility to take it that step, to ask the questions of, are you offering this because, and I don't think some people just don't understand, or they think, well, the selectmen are forwarding this information, they'll take care of it for us. It's not that simple, but it is a consumer responsibility. That's good information. The thing out of the White House, I think it'll probably be a little bit before that becomes local, but it certainly is it's opening eyes, and it's good information.
And there's a lot to sift through, as you can see,
Yeah.
so I just kind of wanted to condense it down to the usable information that people might be able to use on their own benefit, like you said, when advocating for themselves. So
Absolutely.
that's really it for
Okay.
that.
And anything else from broadband regional efforts?
Well, I just wanted to quickly ask, are we gonna discuss the Connect Maine grant application?
Oh, yes, sure,
Okay.
yeah, let's do
A
that.
lot in here, so it's,
But no other updates in the Mid-Coast region?
We have our first meeting in 2 weeks tomorrow, so
Okay.
after that, we'll be able to give you
Alright.
an update.
Great, and broadband committee TBD, but grant applications are certainly relevant to that, yeah. So did you have a talking point you wanted to bring up?
well, I like this draft. I would like the town to submit it, and I would love to hear the thoughts of the four of you on this draft, and what could make it stronger.
I thought it was more than adequate myself.
What's that, Mike?
I thought the draft was more than that, I thought the draft for the, grant application was more than adequate. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
And I this was also something I had brought in, but I know we have had a problem with getting documents in a timely manner, and I just really wanted to make sure that everyone on the board had ample time this time to have the document in front of them, review it, and be prepared with any questions or concerns that anyone might have, so.
Yeah, so I guess, again, crossing the Ts and dotting the Is, I wanna make sure that the individuals who are filled in are going to be representative of individuals presumptive of their being appointed. But there are a couple of people listed here and that either have declined the opportunity to continue or have not gotten back to us at the time of this packet being put together. So I wanna make sure that the representatives are accurately depicted. And then I'm gonna go back to my old broken record of section 4C. I don't know if it's 4C or the paragraph below that.
In all cases.
Again, I'm not interested in cutting someone's head off to make ourselves look taller. I would rather that statement be either more positive or generic so that we're not casting shade on any one individual provider. So and not being an expert in this, I don't know if there is a way of doing that without calling out any private businesses in particular. But I would rather, as we have had the discussion previously, keeping things in a positive statement and not calling out a private business negatively, individually.
So how about we just strike,
Yeah.
Lincolnville Communications Inc.,
Okay,
LCI?
Yeah, I
There you
was,
go.
yeah, I was looking at that, and I think we just strike that, you might have to reword a couple things there, but, it just negates any negative finger, finger pointing or any negative, comments towards our current internet provider. And I really think we need to work hard at that.
That works for me.
Yeah,
and not to split hairs, I don't know how this works with ISPs and whatnot, but like red zone and satellite and are we truly a single ISP, or because there are other forms of internet connection, is that a completely accurate statement, or I don't know, forgive my ignorance.
100%, I don't know. 90-something% certainly.
Yeah,
how
so,
would you
Vast
like to say
majority.
dominant rather than single?
yeah,
Or
I
something to
just,
that effect.
I know that I'm coming across as an incredible stickler, but, again, let's use the language that we have to make it as forceful and accurate as possible. Yeah,
That is the biggest question / concern that I had with the Connect meeting. Yeah.
And as long as we're editing, why don't we just strike John Williams' name? Because he's communicated to you all that he's not interested.
Yeah,
David.
and also
Yeah.
Gina, so
Oh,
we
okay.
don't know necessarily.
Yeah, right, yeah. There you go.
And I believe, and I could be wrong, but I think this is also because this draft is coming out of the board in which they serve, which is why we're bringing, so
Yep.
that when we have the new iteration of the broadband committee, we can make a more accurate and detailed list of the people that are actually serving it.
Sure.
And so, since it is a language discrepancy that we're having with the, is leaving LCI out of it, which I'm totally for, and taking out the 100% because we can't guarantee that, is an organic monopoly, is that a neutral enough of a term?
I don't know, I struggled with that.
It's technically a natural monopoly. not
Sorry,
organic.
thank you.
Well,
Because
it's
that's
100% of users.
Well, I know, but that way we don't have a hard number that,
Oh.
you know what I mean,
Yeah.
and it describes it in a way that's not inflammatory, because a natural monopoly is not, like a monopoly that's been created under adverse, conditions. It's something that has just, and I just personally find that that's an accurate description. I'm fine with not having it, but that way we can do without the
Could we
name, and we
use-
can do without 100%, and.
Could we use the word majority?
Yeah, that's,
You know what I
I
mean?
just had,
And this is just, I mean, again, this is just a
Yeah.
linguistics thing.
Yep.
And I'm not meaning this to be argumentative, just majority to me, and this is only my own personal interpretation, when I think of majority, I think of there being a large portion of the other. So majority to me could be 75%, 25%, but when I hear majority, I don't really think of the type of, ratio that we have here, which really is like a 90.
but a monopoly also, like, I feel like it's somewhat inflammatory and also not 100% true, because people could be using whatever whatever the satellite thing is, but if we could say a market dominated by a single provider,
That's-
the way to say it.
I like that.
I mean, that's-
Yeah, I think,
A
yeah.
low,
it's
yeah.
neither inaccurate, but it also carries the force of the reality.
And that's the whole thing, is
That's
that
perfect.
encapsulates the power
Does
that's
that
going on.
work for
Can you say
everybody?
that one more time?
Market dominated by
Yeah,
a
Lincolnville's
single
unique
provider.
status is a market dominated by a single
Yeah.
ISP provider.
Yep, and that's exactly how
Okay.
I feel, that's
Okay.
a good description of a natural monopoly.
Without
so I'm
using
happy.
some of the
Perfect.
like trigger words that
Yeah,
tend to, yeah, okay. Any other thoughts on the document? I didn't, other than getting the participants accurate,
Yeah.
and David Kinney is called out quite a few times in this, so just, as his bosses, we feel good about, the responsibilities dictated to him within this draft?
I think they're all necessary since this does have to pass through the town, so I personally, yes, I find it's appropriate.
And just as a matter of procedure, David, are you going to need a follow-up motion or something else from the board to give you the authorization to sign on the town's behalf?
Yes, I think that would be appropriate.
Someone wanna make that
I
motion?
would like to make a motion to adopt the amended draft with the changes made on October 12th of 2021 to the Connect Main, this is the Connect Main planning grant application.
Second.
And authorize our town
And,
administrator.
and authorize our town administrator to submit that application on behalf of the town of Lincolnville.
Second.
Moved and
Thank you,
seconded.
ladies.
Sorry to jump in.
No,
there.
that was very appropriate.
Discussion,
And just
So-
a clarifying question. Oh,
yes.
all
Go
right,
ahead.
Thank you.
Maybe the same thing.
So the broadband committee is gonna meet Thursday. I actually think it's at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
6 o'clock? Okay. Not 5 o'clock.
And officers will be elected.
Yeah, and number one,
Uh-huh.
and number two, we will choose the appropriate people for this list, for the pre-certification, and then we'll send that Friday morning, and then that'll be filled in and then sent off. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
That's what seems,
So the other thing that I had, just for clarification, we're going to strike the local internet provider's name or business name out of this. Now, also, we have an active Facebook community broadband group. We gotta get,
oh, thanks
that's
for
gotta
catching
be,
that.
that's gotta be manipulated so that that is not in there.
Where is it?
That's not in this one.
It's right, just above C.
How did I miss that?
Are you
one?
on the island one or are you still on the Connect Main one?
He's
Because
God
I've been
forbid if I
getting
am.
them. I've been getting them switched
No.
up.
I don't know,
No,
Connect
it's-
page 3, top paragraph.
And
Yeah.
where am I on
not,
Thank you.
I hope
Yeah,
this is,
Three, right here.
Yeah.
there is a private Facebook group for citizens, for Lincolnville citizens for broadband, but that is not connected to the town in any way, so I don't know
Yeah,
if
so I
that's
think
relevant.
keeping,
Yeah. Okay.
in reviewing our social media policy would be good for everybody involved.
Definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, I think just striking that
Okay.
altogether, and perhaps it might make sense to amend the motion to, say that participants and named partners pending the Thursday broadband committee and election of officers, et cetera.
Do you think that that would fall under the amended changes made on this date, or is that not specific enough?
I don't know, David.
I think
thoughts?
I think I got it.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
If I have to sign it, it's-
Yeah.
I think I got
Just
it.
wanna make sure.
Okay, so wait, where were we? You were asking for clarification.
Yeah, so my clarification was clarified, and then your clarification regarding striking the Facebook group.
It
We
was
should do
stricken,
that.
it was clarified, it was changed.
Okay,
Yeah, we're good.
So, yeah.
okay, so everybody's clear
Yeah.
on, all right. Any further discussion? I am going to say something that will be perceived as unpopular, but it's going to be a political vote. I'm not going to vote for it because I would like to see the 3.0 iteration of the broadband committee tighten up how they perform and what they bring to the select board, because this is kind of a hot mess. So, just so you know, when I vote against it, that's why it is not, I am all for access to internet, broadband, and all of these efforts, but I need to see the methods in which we get to it improve.
So this is a question of clarification because details will always help. That was quite a broad statement with really no specifics. What specifically would you like to see done, and what specifically is a hot mess? Because I know last meeting you kind of had alluded to that, but I know I would appreciate as a fellow board member that when comments are made like that, that there's some specificity so that it's not just kind of floating out in the air.
Sure,
can I interrupt here? I'd like to hear discussion on that too, but there's a motion on the table. Can we kind of move that on?
Sure, but I
And
just,
then-
I wanted
oh,
during the
no,
discussion,
I understand.
I wanted to,
Yeah, no, I understand, yeah, no,
to explain why
no,
I'm
I
about
just
to
was
vote
kind
for
of
what.
hoping we wouldn't go there while there's something on the table, that's all.
So, any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? And opposed? You're opposed?
Yes.
Okay.
3-2.
Okay, thank you all very much. So Mike, you wanted to expand on the conversation during discussion?
Not really, I was just I was just hoping that we would get to the motion,
Sure.
and I didn't want to
Yeah.
divert it, that's all,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, David?
I'm not a member of the board, but I would like to, I think it's important that we all take a half a step back and remember what we're doing here and who we're doing it for. You all are here because you're elected for the people to represent the people. You all take an oath to support the Constitution, the laws of the state, and blah, 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 ordinances of the town charter and all that stuff. Some of the conversation I've heard tonight has given me a little bit of pause, and I will assign that to newness of some people on committees. I've heard things about how we've been sharing documents via email for amendments and changes and circulating, and that runs contrary, if not directly opposite, to Maine's Freedom of Access Act, which we all need to follow and bend over backwards to make sure that we do and do well and do right. We are doing the public's business. They need to have the opportunity to attend meetings, participate in meetings, see drafts, comment on drafts, put forward suggestions for changes, and deadline be damned, as far as I'm concerned. If we can't do that, if we can't do the public's business in public, we shouldn't be doing that business at all. I don't want to be part of that. Hopefully the five of you don't want to be part of that. Hopefully anybody working on your behalf on a committee doesn't want to be part of it. I think some of that is enthusiasm and newness, and I can understand that, and not understanding necessarily the intricacies of the law and what's required of us. I'm just concerned that if we put those things aside, that we're going down a slippery slope very quickly, and I don't want to be part of that, and you shouldn't either, and I don't believe anybody does, and I don't believe there's an intention to do that. But we need to be very careful when we do these things. We've gone through a very challenging period of 18 months or so with Zoom meetings and things that were never allowed before, and there is some facets and people that would like to continue to do that, and there are some allowances for doing that, but at our core, it's important that we do the public's business publicly, and if we're not going to do that, we just might as well all just go home right now, because it's just not right, and we need to make sure that when we do something, even if we miss an opportunity, we'll be better off in the long run for having missed the opportunity, to be able to look everybody in the eye and say, we did the right thing for you, whether you believe it or not. It's true. And that's my concern, because I've been doing this a long time, in a number of communities, and if you start down the wrong road on the small stuff, when it gets to big stuff, you're just gonna repeat that behavior, and it's gonna get us all into hot water. So just a word to the wise, and I'll just stop, because I'm rambling.
Thank you, David.
Thank you,
Yeah,
David.
I appreciate you saying that, David. However, it does kind of beg the question, as far as efficient editing of documents by committees.
Efficient, yeah.
You know, I mean, the gray area, and,
Uh,
there is none. And,
There isn't really.
okay.
The work, committee work is been described to me as, this is grunt work, and how can we have 8 people doing this? Assign it to one person, and then distribute it just like this one, to the board, and you sit there and the board spent time, a monopoly, a dominant this, a single this. It's very inefficient, and it's ugly, but it's public. We've got people who can watch on TV, we've got people here in the audience, people on live stream. Undoubtedly, we reported that the board was debating whether to use the word dominant or single or monopoly. And it isn't always pretty, and it certainly isn't efficient. The wheels of government move very slowly, and it's designed to move slowly because in essence, you're spending other people's money. And would you rather go fast and spend their money unwisely, or go slow and spend their money wisely? And it's intentionally not a efficient and clean way to do business. It really isn't. But we're not doing business, we're doing government.
Yeah, Josh?
Thank you. I have just a clarifying question. Just not that you're an expert
Sure.
at the FOA Act, but so a Google Doc, and obviously COVID has made things legal that were not legal, like Zoom meeting. But I'm wondering a Google Doc, a public Google Doc, where the link is on the Lincolnville Town website under the Lincolnville Broadband Committee, is, in your opinion, would that be permissible? That being a published link where the public could log into it at any time and see the changes, see the current state of it.
The intent, as I understand it, of the Freedom of Access Act is so people have access and they can view it there, but they're not privy to the thought process around how things are documented and how things are changed and why things are changed, and the deliberative process, the give and take, the communications amongst members, and how consensus is built versus, I made my 4 changes and submit, and you made your 4 changes and submit. I don't think it does. I think the essence of the meetings is to allow for public discourse and interpretation, and then, eventually some things have to be settled with, I think the word ought to be dominant, and I don't. And okay, well, I'll make a motion that it is dominant, and somebody seconds it, and you don't necessarily want to get to that level of detail, but if it takes that, it takes that. And to just have people making edits to a document, you don't know why. And that's part of the reason the public is involved and is allowed to come to the meetings. We're doing the public's business, and you do the public business in public.
Yeah.
So I also, just clarification, just because can not learn without getting information.
Sure.
So are your concerns, you must have some specific concerns. Is it more than the Google document? Is it also the grant that was given to the island? Just because it would help me to learn and grow to know which things are concerning you in that manner. Because the editing of something before it's presented to the board, and the end result is that we in fact did have those deliberations in public about the document that was brought forth. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding anything. So the Google document was troublesome, but was that the only thing, or is there anything else?
Well, I don't
Not to
know.
put you on the spot, but I just
Sure,
want to know.
I don't mind being on the spot.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know, I don't attend every committee meeting. I
Yeah.
tried to attend as few committee meetings as possible, so I don't know how some of these things got done. Now, the Island Institute grant, I'll just turn around and ask you a question back. After a document was circulated and edited, did the group get together and say, I move that we submit this, or I move that we give it to the board to submit, or, you know, these are common things that boards and committees do. We're gonna have a report later from the Wage and Personnel where they got together in this room and said, you know, okay, let's look at these things and what are we gonna recommend? And then you get minutes and that type of thing. And the ability of the public to see what you're doing, listen and participate if participation is allowed, and then a recommendation that comes forward. It's very process oriented, but it needs to be, because otherwise people don't know how it happened. You know, something just showed up on the selectman's desk, somebody moved it, somebody seconded it, and they voted. People are mystified, versus being able to come and somebody says, oh, look, we're talking about Freedom of Access Act copying cost. If somebody's interested in how much we charge for a photocopy, they can come participate. They can say, that's ridiculous, or it ought to be free, whatever they want to say. You put an agenda together, you tell people when you're gonna have a meeting in a public space, because that's what we're required to by our charter, and people, hey, I've been to a lot of committee meetings where there's no audience, but that's not for, you know, it's not because we're hiding it from them, it's just they choose to not, they're not interested, or they have something else to do and they're not coming. So I can't answer specifically if there's a lot of things that, or other things that raise a red flag for me, but the circulation of a document for changes or edits raises a red flag. When somebody tells me they're doing something via email on a committee level, beyond scheduling or distributing information that we're going to talk about at the next meeting,
No, I understand,
Yep.
and I am learning.
Oh yeah,
and I'm
everybody
new-
is.
But so forgive my ignorance, but I don't know if things with an ad hoc committee are different, like, cause you know how it's not the same rules of a quorum where you're not, are those same, but also at the same time, I thought, and I'm sure that this was a misunderstanding, but FOIA was also the freedom of press and individuals to request documents from a government or public entity and to have those disclosed, which if that was done, there is a written record and delineation of the whole process. I'm not negating, so I'm just trying to learn where that line exists so that if in fact that is a problem, that we can make sure that in the future, in these committees and ad hoc committees, that edits and such are made within the structure of a public meeting. And again, forgive me if I'm ignorant, but I really thought that because there are so many correspondences that are done through email, that the FOIA was to provide access to the public to get their hands on those documents in order to review.
There's many different levels and pieces and parts of the Freedom of Access Act. The primary core of it is public access to the meetings, to the documents, to the public records, and how those decisions are made. And certainly, I don't take any offense to it, because, you know, that's again at the core, and we need to get that information out. We disseminate periodically our board committee rules, guidelines, whatever they are for the chairs, which is trying to be helpful. It's not uncommon for me to attend when we start a new ad hoc committee, the first committee meeting, just to say, hey, you know, this is a quorum, and you're supposed to have 50% plus one, or anything more than 50%. And some of those things, and we've been, like I said, the last year and a half has been more than challenging for committees, because we were actually meeting, via Zoom, which we would put out a public link, so the public could view it if they wanted to. Some committees allowed the public to participate. I'm thinking like the planning board or something like that. So it's out there, and we're in a bit of a transition back to the old way, hopefully, demask ourselves. So, but again, I'd encourage anyone on a board, committee, or commission, if they've got a question about it, about how to make it, work, to ask. I've had to tell a certain interim committee chair, sorry, no, you can't do that right now, and you can't do that. You've got to have a meeting, and there's concerns about, sitting in a room like this wearing a mask for an hour. And I understand that. Some committee met down at Breezemere Park in the bandstand, trying to make it work.
Mike, you had a question.
Yeah, well, David, you raise a big issue, obviously. I'm wondering, do you think the issue is large enough that it would be in the town's interest, and all these people who volunteer for committees, to, I hate to use the word workshop.
Yep.
Have a kind of a 101 workshop to go over a lot of the points that you went over, and,
Yep.
and the practical mechanisms.
It would be nice if we could, at some point, shed the mask and have a workshop with committee chairs, absolutely.
Yeah, something like that.
Right now, I think a number of people have expressed concerns about attending meetings. They might come, they might choose not to. But yes, anytime people can have a better understanding of how their local government is supposed to work and how it works, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
It's a great thought and a suggestion, and one that previous boards have done when we get to these sort of places, because this isn't necessarily new. Enthusiasm runneth over, and yet municipal government remains the same cumbersome.
Stodgy.
Yeah,
it is.
but
no, it's what it is. Yeah.
Daylight is the best disinfectant, right?
Sure.
And so, so hence the extremely frustrating, long, drawn-out deadlines that we, sitting here, are married to, wed to. And transitively, all of our committees, commissions, department heads, et cetera.
Yeah, it just occurs to me that perhaps the town, and a lot of other towns, are at a moment where, because of the shutdown and the Zoom and everything else like that, it might be a good idea to try to get as much clarity amongst people who want to help out, who want to volunteer and do stuff, so they don't say, man, it's a little too complicated, guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's something we might want to put on the burner.
Sure, I think we should look
have
for the
us on them later.
opportunity. Yeah. So more on anything more on the grant application that we moved on? Anything more on broadband update for now? Okay, there will be
Beat
more to
that
come,
one.
I'm sure. Jordan, anything?
I don't think so. I'd probably be best not to, so. I'll bite my tongue and we can move on. Yeah, you
Okay.
say so fit.
And so, as agreed, we'll go back to agenda item number 6. Oh, yes, sorry, David.
No, I was just gonna say on agenda item number 6, Jay Filoon contacted me over the weekend and said that he would be interested in continuing, so
Okay.
you can move him from wherever he is on that list. up to the other portion,
Okay,
if you want to.
okay.
And, sorry, did Gina Sawyer get
I
that?
haven't talked to Gina.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, getting back on track, we have some, I'll put in quotes, new applicants who are here tonight. Thank you very much for your patience, sitting through our conversation. And so, does the board wish to speak to either of the new applicants?
Sure.
Who would you like to ask to the podium first?
I would like to hear from Mike Kosowski, why he wants to serve on this committee.
Thank you. Michael Kozowski on Maslin Road. I currently serve on the Board of Assessment Review for Lincolnville, and I had the good fortune to represent Lincolnville at the CSD School Board. So when I say to you, thank you for everything you're doing, you'll know that I understand a little bit about what goes on. I have some broadband experience. It comes from, for about a decade, I've been running a website that wireless internet service providers use to determine if they can reach their customers. They enter the locations of all their towers, and if a customer calls, they can see on the map whether they're in line of sight to any of the towers, which tower, what the path looks like, that kind of thing. Running it for about a decade. In the interest of full disclosure, I'll mention I have one client in Maine, and that's Red Zone Wireless, who I know appears in some of these documents. Like many of my clients, they're both a subscriber, and they hire me for consulting. They pay me for consulting services involving the mapping that I do on the site. I think, well, why don't you guys ask questions? I think that's really all I have to say about it.
Sure, I'll
Broadband.
put you on the spot. I'll put you on the spot, yeah.
Please.
Yeah, sure. As far as red zone goes, as you know, I mean, the hybrid option, or whatever you want to call it,
Right.
could very well come down to that for broadband expansion for this town. Red zone is one of the big players in that fixed wireless area, right? Okay, would you have a problem if they were to be involved, if they were sitting at the table?
I don't have a problem.
Okay.
I don't have a financial interest in Red Zone.
That's what I'm
Other
kind
than
of getting at,
consulting.
Mike, I'm sorry.
I have no idea what the conflict of interest laws are on this, but they'll pay me hourly for consulting, and they subscribe to the service. And I don't think that's impacted by what they may or may not do in Lincolnville, but I don't know. Anyway, I would have no problem
Recuse
voting
yourself.
for them, voting against them, recusing myself,
Okay,
whatever people
that's
think
what I
has to be
wanted to
done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great, thanks.
Sure.
That's it.
Anyone else?
Nothing from me.
Thank you, Michael.
All right,
Thank you.
And did you want Arlene to come up?
Sure, yeah.
Arlene, would you mind?
As long as it's not about Browntown Law.
No. We'll stay on topic.
My name is Arlene Jurowitz-Layton, and I'm interested in being on the broadband committee because I really think that it's a critical service for our town. I believe that we need it for so many different aspects, for education, for careers, for work, for medical help. And I'd like to see us go forward to have the kind of connections that will not just be good for now, but what do we need in the next 10 to 20 years? And I think if you heard some of the things that Angus King has talked about, what we're doing is very similar to what happened with electricity. So I am very interested in seeing how we as a town can go forward to have the type of infrastructure that we need for the future of Lincolnville. one of the things that, you know, I've kind of been involved with technology on and off for about, 40 years. And recently, what I did was to use the internet as an e-mentor, an online science advisor, and a college professor. And I also worked with Jason Academy and National Geographics to provide programming for people actually all over the world. So I understand the need for a type of service this way. The other thing that I'm interested in, and I've been working, beginning of the summer, I worked with Carolyn Sins about, is looking at the use of augmented reality and how it might be used for the Lincolnville Historical Collection to enhance and engage the people who visit, the people who are interested in history. And I think that we need the types of connections that will be able to have these newer technologies be accessible. So one of the things, Susan Corbett, I believe on February 8th, she was invited through Zoom to your board meeting. And so what I want to say is that how can we work so that we can have accessibility and affordability for our whole community? And how do you understand the term affordability, that no one is left behind? So that's kind of why I'd like to be on this committee.
Questions for Arlene?
Just thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
a lot.
And it might be a bad season for Borough Town Moth this year. I'm sorry.
It always
It'll
is.
hit you.
At this point, would anyone care to make a motion?
So I'd like to make that motion, but so it says, I move to appoint, it says insert name or names. Can I list them all
Yep.
in one motion?
Go for
Same.
it, Kurt.
All terms expiring at the same time.
Yep, okay. Let's do this. I move to appoint Jordan Barnett Parker, Joshua Garrettson, Arlene Jurowitz Layton, Stephen Coltai, Mike Kosowski, Cheryl Nevius, David Perkins, and Jay Filone to the Broadband Committee with a term expiring June 2022.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much. Same reasoning. Thank you all very much for the robust discussion, and with no further ado, Stacy, would you like to come up to the podium, please?
Just vote yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
guys.
I'm Stacy Parr. I'm the chair of the Wage and Personnel Board, and I'm here on behalf of the board. We met on September 15th, and we met to discuss your charge from your meeting of March 3rd to look at wrong one. The firefighter insurance, I don't have the date on it. Oh, April 26th, sorry. The supplemental charge of the call firefighter life insurance coverage. So we did some background work. I was able to send a email to a listserv getting different towns and cities to respond, stating what they use for their coverage. I spoke to Marcus at MMA, as did David, and we got a couple options for you to look at. And those are Provident, which I didn't write down an actual number, but MMA Insurance was definitely the biggest user of towns and cities that responded to the survey or to my call to ask, and much less of those respondents were for Provident. Mm-hmm. When the board met, we reviewed both of these policies. Now, I'll be honest, we didn't do a comparison because we're not insurance people, and this would have been too difficult to do. So we're leaving that in your hands, however, obviously we felt that, you know, MMA is our current provider. They offer all of our coverage. It's a great plan, it's a great price, and it certainly, in our mind, makes sense to go with a company that we know and we work with every day, has our workers' comp coverage already. However, both of these people or companies are willing to meet with you guys at a meeting if you would like. And I think that's it.
Questions for Stacy? Yeah, Jordan?
Sure. So, in looking through this, I found that there were great numbers for the Provident options. There was a plan 1, 2, and 3, but I had a hard time finding similar descriptions of the policies from the other two. Is there?
Jordan, again, I'm not an insurance agent.
No, I know. I'm just looking for the
So-
document where, because I couldn't.
Are you asking the difference in the MMA policies?
Well,
So
I-
they have one policy, and it is $34 per volunteer per year. On the Provident policy, the premiums per firefighter per year are based on which policy you choose under them.
Yeah.
So, yes, you could absolutely choose, you know, their plan, I can't remember if they're plan A, B, C, 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, so, you know, it's dependent on what you wanna pay, so.
Well, I was more looking at, and again, I understand that
Yep.
insurance
Okay, I'm sorry if I
documentation is
misunderstood
dry.
your
No.
question.
I'm trying to find, like, for instance, a death payout amount, which was very clear in the Provident, but I had a
Oh,
hard
okay,
time
sure.
finding that.
So, again, in the MMA plan, if you, there isn't page numbers, so I think if you go to page
Looks like
5,
Looks like this, Jordan.
it says
Okay,
what and when, who, what, when. And it says accidental death and dismemberment benefit, principal sum, $50,000.
Okay.
So if you look under the when,
Yeah.
there's your explanations of your benefits.
right. And, okay, so that's clarified. I know, I remember bringing this motion forth, and I really was hoping that we would get, and not, this isn't directed to you, but I was hoping to look at a death payout of $100,000, and I just wanted to say that. It looked like the only one that did that was Provident, and unless I'm, again, because these insurance papers are just fantastically fun reading, my eyes may be jumping over something that I didn't notice.
No, and I understand your thought, and it's a good one, and I think the fact that we're going from nothing to something is amazing. But you're also looking at, instead of $34 per volunteer per year, of a cost of $155.80, or approximately that, depending on our current number of firefighters. So, you know, that's just a cost factor that you guys will have to look at.
Yeah.
And again, it might be a good idea to have both of them come. I do not believe that there is any coverage that MMA offers
About 50,000.
above 50. I
Yeah.
believe this is their coverage.
Yeah. Thank you.
But however, that is quite a difference from 34 to, over the 150 factor.
Other questions?
Not to say they're not worth it, I'm just saying that is quite
Sure,
a,
yeah.
Yep, other questions for Stacy? Mike?
I'm sorry, Stacy, not for you.
Okay.
oh,
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be rude. I'm so sorry.
Well, thank you, yeah.
I just figured, well, we've got her in the hot seat.
Yeah, I
like
understand. I
let's-
understand. I'm so sorry.
No, thank you.
Karen, anything for Stacy?
Thank you, Stacy.
you're welcome.
Yeah,
Yes.
thanks a lot.
Appreciate your patience. Thank you for your thorough analysis of this and bringing us a lot of information. Much appreciated.
Definitely. Good stuff.
So, Mike, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would love, at the risk of my eyes glazing over, I'd love to hear from MMA and Providence.
Okay.
There's a lot that I wouldn't be able to understand right away from their spiels, but at least I'd be able to ask them some questions.
Okay.
I think I would like to hear from them as well.
Yeah, good.
Sure.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Definitely, and I just feel like paying under $4,000 for 30 members of our fire department to be able to have that kind of a reassurance, I feel like that is a very good that's not a terrible price, so I just wanted to give my opinion on that, but I definitely wanna hear from the insurance companies, because, like I said, it's my least favorite type of reading, so clarification is great.
So general consensus is to invite representatives from these
Yeah.
two companies?
Yes.
The only thing that I might just suggest too is some of the people that might have responded that they use the other company, if they've actually claimed benefits, how that company responded.
Yeah,
So I can forward that list to David, so maybe he could also check with them to see if they've had any claims.
yeah,
Because
that would
that's
be,
the other side that's important.
absolutely.
We know MMA is gonna do that,
Yeah,
so.
yes, good,
Great,
excellent,
thanks, yeah.
excellent consideration. Thank you so much. So we'll look to schedule that at a future
Yep.
board meeting.
Great.
And David, would you be so kind as to get with Stacy and hopefully we can gather that
Yep.
customer experience piece. Would be great.
Can do.
Okay, excellent, thank you all. Anything else on that before we move on?
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank
you
you,
so
have a
much.
great night, Stacy. All right, David, we have an update to our Freedom of Access Act.
Yeah, so we have a fee schedule for various things here in the office, one of which is making photocopies for, I don't know, at least 10 years that we've charged a quarter for an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And the law, part of the Freedom of Access Act, used to say that towns could charge a reasonable fee to cover the cost of copying. We present that to the board would set the fee schedule and away we'd go. This year they've changed the law, so it no longer says a reasonable fee, or it does still say a reasonable fee, but now they've defined a reasonable fee to be 10 cents. So I don't have to violate the law. I'd like to see the board change the fee schedule to be 10 cents for an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. We'll lose out on about $120 a year, but
Ooh.
Well,
we'll follow the law.
the law says, yes, Josh.
So you might have just answered my question, but I wanted to know what is our cost to break even and people's time if you're factoring that in for photocopies?
Ooh.
I know, the factoring people's time, yeah, it's a nice curve.
Yeah.
Oh, and curve.
It probably is more than 10 cents if somebody's got to get up from whatever they were doing, walk to the front counter, take that copy, how many will you want, put it on the copy or make one copy, walk back, click it into the computer to give them a receipt. It probably costs us more than 10 cents, but you know, I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I mean, we spend a fraction of a cent for each copy we make to the copy company, but we also lease the machine,
Yeah.
so it hinges on how many copies we actually make, and for the $120, it isn't, you know. It would have been nice if they'd said it was 15 cents or a quarter. A quarter would have made me really happy. We wouldn't have this conversation, but I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think a quarter was unreasonable. I don't think anybody in my 18 years here ever stormed out and said, I'm not paying that quarter for that copy.
Well, apparently Lincolnville now is gonna get the reputation as the people who scammed people.
Yes.
For 20 years for
Yeah.
15 cents a copy,
Yeah.
Raking in the dough.
That's right, yeah.
annually.
Yeah.
Does anyone care to make a motion?
I move that effective October 18th, 2021, that the board establish the fee for photocopying of 10 cents per page for a standard 8.5 inches by 11 inches black and white copy of a record.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. And we have an update to our submerged land lease, yes?
Yes. So the town has several submerged lands leases for our facilities at the harbor. Basically, any piece of land under low water, the mean low water mark, belongs to the people of the state of Maine. We have the pier, we have floats, we have the breakwater, we have the wave screen. And Carol DeBello and I have been working on updating the submerged lands lease for the float system and the inclines, because they thought that what we had didn't adequately describe what we actually had down there. So you have a new lands lease. There is no charge for this, and it would be good until December 31st, 2032, when it would be reviewed again by
Somebody else.
32. Yeah, let's hope.
So,
Would someone care to make a motion?
I move to authorize the town administrator to execute the submerged land lease number 0257B-1, B-/1-32 with the State of Maine Bureau of Parks and Lands.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And prior to acting on our next agenda item, I need a motion, please.
I move that we suspend our meeting as the Board of Selectmen and that we convene as the Board of Assessors.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And we have a pretty simple correction here. Does anyone have any questions about that correction?
Nope.
If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move the board grant abatement number 2021-07 to Howard Brower in the tax amount of $147.98 to correct an error in building assessment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And before proceeding on, we need a final motion as the Board of Assessors.
I move that we adjourn our meeting as the Board of Assessors and reconvene as the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. So, moving along as the Board of Selectmen, David, would you care to speak to the large check we got?
Sure. Follow up on our American Rescue Plan Act monies. Apparently, we were quite successful in applying online for the first tranche, I guess that's how you say it, of monies. It was interesting that they made us put in our bank routing number, account number, bank contact, phone number, email for the bank, address for the bank, and everything else, and then they mailed us a check. But we took it, we took it, we've deposited the money. The final rule, for the benefit of anybody that doesn't have a newsletter in front of them, our first payment was in the amount of $117,550.39. We'd anticipate something at or about that same level a year from now coming to the town. The Department of Treasury still hasn't issued a final rule, but I can't see it changing a lot from the interim rule, except perhaps expanding upon some of the information. I'll just run over quickly the couple of generalized expenditure categories: public health, negative economic impacts, services to disproportionately impacted communities, premium pay, water, sewer, broadband infrastructure, replacement revenue, and administrative/other. My suggestion at this moment would be that the board charge the finance director with calculating the lost revenue, if any, to the town, because if we were shorted revenue due to the pandemic, we can basically pay ourselves back or reimburse or make up the difference with this. I don't believe that we were in the overall scheme of things, but to have that actual sheet of paper, I think we'd be able to draw a line through revenue replacement. And then my other suggestion was that the board consider reaching out to our board committees, commissions, as well as department heads to alert them of the funding, the program guidance that we have to date, and survey their needs so that we or you all could have a clearer picture of what others think is necessary and appropriate, or might be necessary and appropriate. And then, with that, you can do some prioritizing yourself, and then the recommendation that isn't in here is at some point, I think you ought to talk to the public to see if they have some thoughts and ideas about how that money could best suit them and be used for them. And hopefully by that point, we might have some final rules and be able to do something, or at least know which direction to start heading down the path. There, have I rambled enough on that one?
Questions for David?
Oh, yeah, just thanks for following through, David, and getting through to the federal government. And getting this, I'm impressed. And, no, I just wanted, the only one thing I wanted to say is that, as we're gonna have plenty of time to go through all this, and to debate the language, in the interim rule. But, I just wanted to point out that I understand, that if we look at number 3, you list the 4 areas, the broader areas that, money is intended for. I look at number 3, and I understand it, the intent was to address pandemic-caused economic destabilization, not just immediate economic stabilization to provide for that. That is, I would think it would have to be money would be given out to businesses and or people who have experienced economic destabilization that was caused by the pandemic, not caused by some other whatever reasons.
Yeah, I'm gonna honestly tell you that I cut and pasted that out of.
So I figured you did, but that's how I'm gonna be thinking of it.
Is that government speak for cut the people a check?
I believe that is a possibility, or you could establish a program where businesses could come in and say, well, we didn't have anybody show up at my motel because of the pandemic, and I had to close, and I'm, gonna be foreclosed upon. Can you help?
So like a town sanctioned PPP.
Yeah, I
loan
mean,
sort of thing?
there would. I am certain that there will be all sorts of regulations and rules surrounding that, so it isn't, political graft or whatever you want to describe it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, George.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking to that specifically, I think we need to be really careful because there have been and are a slew of federal programs that have been designed and have millions, if not more, that were allocated for that, including rental assistance, PPP loans for businesses. Lobstermen got a subsidy for lost catches, et cetera, et cetera. So, maybe I am wrong, but I thought that specifically this money was also not to be alleviating, for example, property taxes. Am I right in that understanding, or?
yeah, we're not.
Coming from us.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just.
Yeah, we
'cause
didn't.
Again, it is still convoluted and complex, and I just,
Yeah, we can't pull.
Yeah, it's not meant to just be dispersed to the community.
Yeah, I'm not sure about whether or not it couldn't be dispersed to the community, but it wasn't meant to. Well, back in August, you did the tax commitment. You couldn't stick this revenue in the other revenue line and deduct it from people's property taxes. That was a no-no.
Yeah,
That I can tell you.
Okay.
yeah.
But whether or not you could cut everybody in town a check for $25, that might be an eligible expense, but I know, to be determined still. But I think a good place to start is to, once again, make sure that we as the town itself, the entity, is whole from our expenditures, or our anticipated revenue, and then to help you get a bit clearer picture of all of what goes on or could go on in some of these departments and some of these boards and committees. Ask them directly, hey.
What do you need?
Yeah, or there are obviously, I suspect there'll be some on the list of needs that wouldn't qualify for the program, but how do you
Yeah.
know until you check?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I think these are great suggestions in front of us. Does someone care to make a motion?
I move that the board instruct the town administrator to have the finance director calculate any lost revenue for the town that might be eligible for American Rescue Plan Act funding under the revenue replacement expenditure category.
Second.
Moved and well seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And a second motion.
I move that the town administrator reach out to all town boards, committees, and commissions, along with all department heads, to inform them of the American Rescue Plan Act revenue and to seek their input regarding any possible needs that might qualify for funding under an expenditure category of the American Rescue Plan Act.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion.
Yeah, at the risk of having to amend that, I kind of want to throw out there that this might want to have some sort of deadline to it. I mean, there's a deadline on the expenditure of the funds, you know, all that stuff. But, I can see committees, or maybe, I don't know, you know, committees coming to us and saying, yeah, we'd like to do this, that, and the other thing, but that's gonna, but it involves getting it in the budget for fiscal year '23. Okay, so maybe we want to look at that as a timeline or a
Yeah.
deadline.
Would it be fair to say,
I don't know.
and to come back to the Board of Selectmen during committee, commission, department head, budget proposal time? Because we have yet to establish that
Yeah, I
schedule,
think,
right?
I think these are kind of, I like the deadline, because I work better with deadlines. But I think these are almost, once again, my famous parallel tracks, where we're gonna have budget things going on year-endish.
Okay.
But, we got a holiday coming up. You know, I'm thinking, you know, probably give these committees a month or 6 weeks to respond back to this in specific, and then if they wanna continue with the request during budget time, so be it. Because we may not have an answer, but, we don't wanna let it linger too long, but
Yeah.
there may be some, I'm trying to think of the committee schedule, if they'll have committee meetings, they should before Thanksgiving. Can't believe I'm saying Thanksgiving right now, but it comes pretty quickly.
And, I mean, could we just notify all the chairs and heads of the committees that this is going on and kindly request that, just notify them, can you add this to your agenda so that we can
Yep.
take care of this expediently?
So amend to include a deadline, or,
I'll put a deadline in there.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Okay, well, another reason I bring up a need for a deadline perhaps is that having to do with broadband again, is that 20 grand that came from the county, you know, we lumped in, it's our ARPA money, lumped in regardless of whatever suggestion commissioners may have made. We've got an RFP out there, feasibility study that would be done, and those people may be expecting payment before we get to all of this, through all of the committees and public hearings on ARPA money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not suggesting carving out 20 grand from that and making that a special thing. But we can't count on grants to pay the bill for that feasibility study. So I don't know how we want to deal with that.
Well, since we've got a standing seconded motion on this right now, it seems that it would make sense for us to specifically put on an agenda to discuss
The county money that.
how to deal with that money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I guess.
The other part is, obviously, the broadband committee is meeting, or now that they're reconstituted, will be meeting regularly. I'll reach out to somebody on the committee, because I assume on Thursday you're gonna pick a chair, I think I heard you say that. And say, I mean, that's pretty quick and easy. We'd like at least, 15, 20, whatever thousand for this broadband research project,
Uh-huh.
and maybe more for a bigger project, but.
Yeah. Yeah. So, sound good?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you all very much. And so, at our next meeting, not the 18th, but the 25th, we'll have that conversation, follow-up conversation.
Oh, okay. 10:25.
Alrighty. And we have the first layer of pavement down on the Rocky Top Terrace, correct?
We do.
And.
Well, we don't.
Well, they-
The owner of the development does.
They do, they
Yep.
do. Has anyone had a chance to drive by and see it?
How's it look?
Like a first layer of pavement. But David, have you and Frank had a chance to?
Frank went down there. I've been by, but I haven't been up. And Frank was convinced that it was what he was anticipating seeing on the first layer of pavement
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
subdivision road, so.
It doesn't look done, but it's the first layer, so,
And there's 2 layers ultimately?
Yes.
yeah, the finish.
This is the base layer of the gravel that had been down, the base layer of pavement. And then the agreement gave them till 2025, I think, to get the
Yeah.
finished layer down and the edges grassed in.
Not that this is,
And my understanding is he's only got one more lot down there to sell.
So,
Okay.
so that, it'll be busy. That layer will be
Will be utilized.
used
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
Okay, for building purposes, yeah.
And the remainder of the funds remain in escrow
Yeah,
until
yes.
that second layer is.
Correct,
completed.
and it's done to your satisfaction.
Yeah.
Yep.
The only question I have
yeah,
is when you say that Frank states that it's thick enough, is that all that's required to to meet the requirements of the subdivision ordinance?
The subdivision ordinance talks about the base material, the gravel,
Yeah,
width, obviously.
Yeah.
I said, Frank, thickness is great, but what if it's only, it's not. So, but he'd written about the thickness, because that obviously was a concern elsewhere. But yeah, there's drainage, gravel base, pavement, first layer, second layer of pavement, and then the shoulder material that has to be brought up to the pavement. But
so, yeah, so as far as you know, Frank is,
as far as I know, everything done down
All of
there
those things.
is building upon itself
Yeah.
up
okay,
appropriately.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
any other questions for David? Does someone care to make a motion?
I move that the board authorize the Harbor Ridge subdivision escrow agent to release $45,000 of the escrow funds to Stephen and Margaret Case in accordance with the escrow agreement.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And, Karen, do you have an update for us on Midcoast Solid Waste?
I regret to inform you that I don't.
Nothing to regret. Josh, we've had lots of updates on broadband, but do you have a Midcoast Broadband Coalition update?
I do not.
Okay. Mike, do you?
Yeah, we've got 2 cords of wood delivered this morning. That'll get put away by Friday, and 2 more will be coming this weekend. We'll get that put away by Monday. And I would like to ask David to post a notice of picking up on our website, like we did last year. I thought we did that on our town website. If not, I was wondering if we could.
Sure,
Yeah, okay, I've got the phone number and.
Oh, yeah.
And the dates.
On how to get permission to get some?
Exactly.
Yes, we certainly can do
I'm
that.
sure you could use the same text anyway, but the dates will be, it starts November 6th, pickup.
Yep.
Same number, 338-2692, and you must call and schedule for any pickup. If you can put that in
Must.
big
Yep.
letters, that'd be cool.
I'll work with you to make sure
Okay.
that's gonna
Okay, thanks.
be
Wonderful, thank
appropriately
you.
worded.
Jordan, did you have any other broadband updates for us?
I do not.
Or EMS review committee updates?
No, just I see that we're making a payment, but I have no updates whatsoever.
You do have a meeting scheduled, though. You got that notice?
Yeah.
I'm looking like
I may have, but I didn't
It's-
see, can you resend me
Yep.
that?
end of
We
October.
were talking about email chains earlier. And
Yeah,
I
last
feel like I'm
last
tied up.
Thursday of October, it's
Yeah,
via Zoom.
You sent out a reminder to
Oh.
us.
I do have an update personally. I will not be able to attend the October 25th select board meeting.
Okay. Would you send an email to David?
Of
and I
course,
just-
yes, definitely.
I got that.
And I don't have an update other than that we're finally going to have a meeting, assuming a freak snowstorm doesn't come through and
No, Zoom out.
Please no.
blow out
Oh.
the internet.
So I think lately you get like you were the first person to say that word, by the way.
Snowstorm?
You said it twice.
Sorry.
Oh,
I'm so
I,
sorry.
I don't want to rub it in, but you said
I'm
it
so
twice.
sorry. I'm just,
Yeah.
it's.
It's gonna be 70 degrees
Coming.
the next
It's
couple
all right. It had,
Apologies.
Still warm.
it had to happen.
I'm
No,
living
worries.
in-
Come
No
on, we
worries.
talked about sand and gravel like months ago.
Yeah.
There's implications there. Okay, again, we have a motion for the treasurer and payroll warrants, please.
I move that the board approve the treasurer's and payroll warrants.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And we have some necessary business to discuss where the disposition of real property, premature disclosure of that information could prejudice the competitive bargaining position of the town. So can I have a motion to enter into executive session?
I move that the board enter into executive session pursuant to Title I MRSA, Section 4056C, to discuss the possible disposition of real property where premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive bargaining position of the town.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much.
It was like the Micro Machines guy from back in the day, isn't it? Anyone?
I was gonna say, I think you could get a gig doing
Thank you very
infomercials.